Simon, you and I were talking the other day off the back of Ten Hag's comments about Jadon Sancho. Maybe he's not doing what he should be doing in training, and Jadon Sancho promptly went on social media and said, basically, I'm not having that. He felt it was unfair criticism. It's a bit the other way this time, Danny, because after a move away from Everton fell through on deadline day, it came out that Demarai Gray was none too happy with that. He says it's difficult to play for someone who doesn't show you respect as a person. Now, Sean Dyche has responded to that on the Everton website, saying it's an unfortunate one, this, because I try to keep our business in-house. I think on this occasion, it's right to reply. Demarai made it clear that he felt he was getting a move away from Everton, and he told us a move was done, which was interesting to hear that from a player. We reminded him of the truth of the fact that no moves are done without this club's say-so, which sounds pretty much bang on, I would suggest, Absolutely. Simon. Is this another example, do you think, Danny, of a player getting above his station? Or is it a failure in management that things have got sour and they're appearing in public?
I think it's a little bit of both, but I'm times have changed, haven't they? I just don't... I used to be in the day that you'd have some gumption and a bit of resilience, knock on the door of a manager and have a heart to heart or and have an argument if need be,
instead of going out on social media.
Yeah, I mean, where is it that difficult to go and knock on the door and have a man-to-man conversation where you can, iron these things out or not and leave the room and agree to disagree, whatever it is? I mean, I find it bizarre that players put stuff out about their managers on social media or even the club. Because you're never winning. I don't know how you win. You are.
Why do they do it? Is it a lack of respect?
I think it's a lack of respect. I think it's a bit of fear, bad advice, bad people around you. Because the conclusion is only ever going to make you look bad. You might get what you want eventually, but you probably have got it anyway by going about it the right way. And I think there are occasions. I mean, I didn't hear what you guys said about Sancho and Ten Hag, and I think in an ideal world, Ten Hag would have been able to deal with this without airing it, all that stuff in public.
I agree.
Because what he's done, he's got a depreciating asset there for the club, and although he's the boss and the player shouldn't be coming out and responding, I don't agree with that. By the way, he's the manager. You have respect, and if he gives you a kick, you have to take it. But
as a manager, was Ten Hag right to say what he said?
I don't think so, because he's not managing art. He's not thinking about the bigger picture. Because if he wants him out the door, he's telling.
He's happy with your manager saying that.
He's telling the world. He's telling the world he's got a bad attitude.
I don't think. I mean, first of all, I wouldn't. My initial default setting is not to look at it from the economics of the transaction. Jadon Sancho's 2 or 3 years into a contract. He's on the balance sheet with 20 million quid. You'll always get 20 million quid back from him if you want to. I wouldn't be looking at it from that point of view. I'd be looking at it from the point of view of how he exhibits control over his players. Because historically, you don't see top managers really calling out their players.
No.
They don't need to do it. They deal with it in house.
Yeah,
they deal with it in a certain way, and the player knows his position in the food chain. In this instance, Ten Hag may well be feeling exasperated. He may well have felt that he gave this kid a lot of latitude, sent him off to Holland for 8 weeks, invested in him, and what he's got back is a square root of nothing. And I don't think anyone comes out of this particularly winning. He doesn't look like a Manchester United manager that's controlling his charges. And Jadon Sancho looks like what Jadon Sancho looks like, which is a spot little footballer that's got far too much to say for himself and doesn't do what he should be doing on the pitch. Demarai Gray, I mean, Jesus Christ, anyone could have picked this relationship falling apart. Sean Dyche and Demarai Gray. If someone had said to me, is he Sean Dyche's sort of player? I'd have said, no, he's not.
He actually did well for him, Simon, and that's probably where he gets a little bit
He's done well for everybody at every club he's done. And clearly
Simon,
he's a talented player. But there's always an end product with Demarai Gray that ends him going out the door.
But on deadline day, to be fair, Sean Dyche said that Gray was still part of his plans.
Yeah.
But it was Gray who said it's so difficult to play for someone who doesn't show you respect.
Yeah,
as
but
a person.
you know what?
Depends what you define as respect.
Yeah, it does.
And ultimately, quite frankly, not being picked in a side or not being given what you think you're entitled to is not tantamount to a lack of respect. That's tantamount to the fact you haven't got the move that you want. So what you want to do is use respect and a broken relationship as an opportunity to leverage your particular point and to create the brand of division that you think you're entitled to create. If Sean Dyche is the manager, I mean, Dyche is a strong character, and he won't be for everybody, and that's fine, because not everybody is, right? But the bottom line is, I think he's a pretty equitable, fair bloke. He'll give you enough rope, and what you do with it, run with it, or the other, is entirely up to you. And it would strike me that probably Demarai Gray, for someone that when you really need somebody, he's not one of those, for me, that I would go to in the trenches and go, I'll tell you what, I know what I'm going to get from him when I'm really amongst it. So it doesn't surprise me that there's a disconnect. The boy wanted to go to Saudi Arabia at this stage in his career. because he's going to get paid, and he's been stymied on that for whatever reason.
Well, it looks like he'll go today.
Well, he'll go now.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
And then there was absolutely no need for this kind of outburst. There was no need for this kind of position. But he will say, I wanted to cement my view. And should it be encouraged? Should it be something that this is the society we live in, a sense of entitlement. We're entitled to know what goes on involving refereeing decisions rather than accepting them. And players are now entitled, because we've created this economic landscape where they're islands of their own, where you've got people like Martin Keown telling you that players should be at the table to negotiate what they will and won't do, i.e. what they won't do, rather than accept the ridiculous riches that they've now got. And players have now got this independent mindset with very bad advice around them that's really motivated by their own game.
A minority of players, thankfully.
Well, yes, I accept that, but
Yeah.
but they get rewarded for it, because we've just seen it. We've just seen the boy Nunes at Wolverhampton Wanderers. We've seen Mahrez do it, and these players are not insignificant players, and they're not going to insignificant clubs. And you would think that someone like Pep Guardiola would have watched Mahrez's behaviour at Leicester City and said, "Well, I don't fancy too much of that in my dressing room." The moment you don't like something, but it doesn't. It doesn't matter. No. And this is the problem, and it's more and more prevalent. It's not as prevalent as people might like to believe it is, but it's not insignificant, the amount of players think they can say what they want.
They know they've got all the power, Danny, because in the past, you quite rightly would go to the manager's door, knock it and say, "Listen, I'm not happy, I want a word," and have that word. Now, the same player, the same you, can go out on social media and have a far bigger reach about your own grievance.
Yeah, well, that is a sign of the times, and I find it sad. I think there's something to be said to being able to confront people, have debates. You grow from it. You learn from them. I've sat down with CEOs, I've sat down with chairman, managers, and every time it was hard, and every time I felt nervous doing it, and every time I was a bit wary. But each time I walked out that door, I felt like I'd grown.
Having questioned the manager's authority?
Yeah, and also been put in my place. And also I'd said my piece and felt better for it, even though I didn't get the conclusion I wanted. At least I got it off my chest, and I didn't go and tell 3 people in the dressing room what a turd the manager is.
Yeah.
You know, it's you've got to show some character.
Some backbone.
Does it have to be accepted? I mean, yes, because it happens, but I think it's a coward's way out to put anything on social media that's derogatory to your manager or your club.
But I'm not a Windsor Davies character from 8.5 Hot Mum, like some sergeant major running around barking at people. He was great, wasn't he? But I don't believe that people. Two people can do as they've told. Once you learn how to do as you're told, you can do as you want to some extent. And too many people in football think they can do as they want before they do as they're told. And the balance is. I'm not suggesting that there isn't a fluid conversation that can be had with players and managers, and that players are not silly little boys that don't have a view. Right, and should be treated as such, right? But we are talking about a game where the culture of the game is steeped in certain principles. It is what it is. It's a sport where players are indulged and allowed to get away with things that in society you wouldn't. Right? Yeah. So there is a different set of parameters, and one of them is the manager is the boss, and that's the end of the discussion.
End of.
And you'll do as you're damn well told.
And if you've got something to say to him, go and say it. No problem.
Who gave you the biggest get out of this office?
We had a few.
What was the spectacular one?
Probably the one I remember the most was when I went in the door, wanting to take the door off to have a go at Houllier for dropping me. And not just dropping me, not even put me on the bench, humiliate me in front of everyone. And when I went in there, basically said, what's going on? He hammered me even more and just said, "You've not been doing this. You've not been training right. I spoke to you 6 weeks ago. I gave you a heads up. You've not listened. I told you what was going to happen. Get out the office. Go and work hard, and maybe you'll get back in the team," and shut the door on the way out.
And you did.
And do you know what? I mean, I paraphrased there. He said it a lot more articulately like that, but he gave it to me. And when I left there, I had nothing other than to walk out there and make a decision of what I had to do next.
And what did you do?
Work like a lunatic.
Yeah.
They won the next 5. I didn't get back in for about 6 weeks.
Yeah. You'll have kicked a few people or more out your office, have you
not?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very much so.
In spectacular fashion?
Not so much players, because I wouldn't have them in my office in the first place.
No.
But certainly managers and coaches, yeah.
Yeah.
In no uncertain terms.
You do feel better, though, when because Simon, you would have been more daunting than you probably thought back at, maybe not, maybe your ego was that big back then, but I doubt it. I think people wanted to knock on your door and were a bit, ooh.
Well, you'd be distracted by the hair and the suit.
Rubbish.
Yeah.
I used to love the things like, I remember once when we changed the bonus structures at Palace, and the players said, "We can't do that." And I said, "Well, I can, because I can do as I please. The bonus structures are silent, and I'll tell you when I'm going to pay them." So they said, "We want to see you." So I went down to the training ground, and they were all going to tell me, And I walked in a room and there were mutes. And I said, right, this is what I'm going to do. I don't care if you like it or you don't like it. You're going to do as you believe and we'll told, and that's the end of the discussion. Anyone doesn't like it, form an orderly queue outside my office. And I remember AJ come up to me and said, everybody before you got there said, I'm going to tell him, I'll tell him. And when you walked in the room, absolute silence.
Yeah, well, I was never the silent one.
Love it. Danny was sent packing by Monsieur Houllier.
Yeah.
Love that.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.